This whole thing happened 2 years ago, about 2 weeks before Christmas. I would also like to apologize if anything is unclear. I am a 16-year-old female. Blub is 11 and Mo is 13. One night at around 11:30 p.m. during Christmas break, I'm sitting in my mama's room just talking to my sisters, Blub and Mo, and of course, my mom. Sitting together to talk is a usual thing for us. As we're wrapping up our conversations and saying our goodnights, my mom says she wants some water. Because it's important to the story, we don't keep water bottles in the house because when they're in there, my tweaker of a father likes to go for them. Wouldn't be a problem, but he usually takes a sip or two and then gets another bottle, even though the one he just grabbed is half full. It aggravates my mom, so she just keeps them in her truck. Anyways, she asks Mo and me to go outside and get her a few bottles. I grab the car keys and head outside. I get to our front gate and wave to Mo to come with me. The punk says she doesn't want to help carry the water in because it's cold outside. I walk my happy self down the driveway and to my mom's vehicle. As I was walking down, I see a black figure standing in the middle of the street. I brush it off and just tell myself that the person is probably walking through to get somewhere. I grab the waters, but out of the corner of my eye, I can still see the person standing absolutely still. As I close the trunk and lock the car, I see him turn his head to stare at me. I was so creeped out. I ran up my driveway, slammed the gate, into my house and locked the doors. I told my mom about the man, and she called my dad and asked him to see who was out there. My dad comes home about an hour later. Apparently that same person was still standing there and didn't leave until after my dad asked him how he was doing. 2 days later, my grandma asks me to take some money over to our neighbor's house. Neighbor owns a meat locker. We got our tamale making supplies from her, had to pay the bill. I'm in my comfy slippers, so I ask Mo and Blub to go do it. They agreed to go, but only if I stood outside the gate and watched them. The girls walk over to her front door and knock. She doesn't answer, so they stand there waiting for a couple of minutes before they try it again. I noticed that after they knocked the first time, the guy I'd seen standing in the middle of the street 2 nights before was walking up the street. I got an eerie feel and was hoping the neighbor would hurry. He was 2 houses away when she finally answered the door. The girls said goodbye to our neighbor and proceeded to walk back to our house. They were up the driveway when the man was at the starting point of our neighbor's driveway. He was literally 10 steps away from the girls. He starts laughing, just this gross cackle of a laugh. The girls get creeped out and start to run up the driveway. He picks up the pace, notices me standing at the gate waiting for them, looks me in the eye, bites his lip, and starts whistling some creepy tune. By now the girls are inside the gate. The man starts walking up our driveway, still whistling, and I shake my head no, and he cackles again. He's about halfway up the driveway when my dad comes out. My dad hasn't taken notice to him yet, but the man sure saw him. He looked me straight in the eyes, this smirk on his face, and says, "You got lucky this time." He walks towards the sidewalk on the opposite side of my house and continues whistling. I was freaked out, and I started to cry. Of course, I told my dad about what happened right then and there. He was furious at the guy. He tried looking for him after, but couldn't find him. Later on that night, my dad sees the man walking down our street again. My dad approaches him and asks him what he's doing. The guy smirks at my dad and just walks away. My father reported the man to the police. Unfortunately, when the police got there, the guy was long gone. The next day, my sisters and I see about 5 cop cars at another one of our neighbor's house. We questioned it and told our dad about it. He's good friends with those neighbors. About an hour later, the police show up at our door. They were there to talk to us about the same man standing in the middle of the street and walking up my driveway. He had tried to assault our neighbor's 10-year-old daughter. It turns out that the man had broken in through the little girl's bedroom window and attempted to kidnap the girl. And when she started yelling, he yanked her by the hair and started hitting her. Her parents were in the backyard, but her older brother heard what was going on and told her parents to come inside. The little girl's dad tackled him down and started beating him senseless. Meanwhile, the mother called the police. We live near a police station, so they made it to the house really fast. After questioning him, they found out that the man had debated on whether he should go after me or the little girl. The guy was also a registered sex offender. He told the police that he'd seen me walking home from school a few times, but never got to do anything because I was always surrounded by friends. He made comments about how sexy I looked on the weekends when I'd come out in shorts and a tank top to throw at the trash. He told them that he'd even gone through our mail in hopes of finding out my name. He confessed that he was really interested in me. He realized that if he ever dared try anything on me, I'd put up a fight. After the cops talked to my parents and I, they asked me to leave the room so they could talk to my parents alone. I don't know what they talked about, but I spent the next few days bawling my eyes out. I was so scared to be at home. Even though the guy was in prison, I didn't feel safe in my home. I felt so disgusting and very shaken. I was terrified at the thought of some creep thinking of me in such a disgusting way. I blamed myself for a brief time after it all happened. A month later, I finally asked to see a therapist and found that it really helped me. I am finally okay with talking about the whole thing. I consider myself to be very lucky. This happened in 2019. I was in my second year of college and living in a townhome about a 10-minute walk from campus. I lived with 2 other girls at the time, but they were all back at their parents' house for the holiday. I work in healthcare and was working Christmas this year. A little bit of a backstory. There used to be 4 of us living there, but one girl had moved out due to issues with her boyfriend. He was a jackass who abused our kindness on allowing him to stay there. Was only supposed to come every so often, but basically ended up living there. We told her she needed to kick him out after an incident with him one night after he got physical with her and verbally abusive with the rest of us. She wouldn't listen, and we told her we would have to talk to the landlord then. Long story short, she ended up moving out and left on bad terms with us. On another side, not here, I have been in physically and mentally abusive relationship before, so I understand how things may have been going for her. I tried my best for 2 years at that point to help open her eyes to the abuse and get her away from him. At this point, it was affecting everyone, and we didn't feel safe with him there, so she moved out. Okay, back to the story. It was Christmas Eve, and I worked the next day, so I was getting ready for bed, locked the doors, turned the lights off, and went downstairs where my bedroom was. I was scrolling on TikTok for about an hour. It was Christmas Day at this point, when I heard what sounded like the chairs in the kitchen move. The kitchen is right above my bedroom. I thought maybe I was hearing the neighbors next door, as we share the same walls and sometimes they can be loud. But I remembered one of them texting me and asking me to bring in a package they were expecting while they were all gone at home. The noise was short-lived, and so I just brushed it off. Next thing I know, my bedroom door is being opened slowly. In this moment, I get a flashback and remember my second-grade teacher telling us about the time someone broke into her house, and she acted as if she were asleep, so if they were just there to rob her, they wouldn't feel the need to hurt her if she saw them. But my freaking phone screen is lighting up my scared jaw-dropped face, so I can't act like I'm asleep. Where I'm laying in bed faces directly to the door, so we're just looking right at each other. So there I was laying in my bed shitting myself while this guy has 1 foot in my bedroom with the door cracked open. It felt like an eternity, but in reality was probably more like 10 seconds of us looking at one another. He slowly takes his foot out and closes my door. I sit there just in complete utter shock. I couldn't make out what he looked like as my eyes were adjusting to the dark again from the phone screen. All I could see was a backwards baseball cap. I knew I had to call the police, but my anxious ass knew if I called it would alert my parents' phones that I called. Me being dumb as hell was like, well, I don't want to make them worry. Also, I was scared he might still be somewhere in the house, and I didn't know what he would do if he heard me call. So I text the guy I was seeing at the time and tell him, some random guy just broke into my house and came into my room. He snapped me out of it and told me to call the police, and so I did. The dispatcher asked me if I felt comfortable to go unlock the front door for them, so they didn't have to break it down. And I told her, no way, I don't care if the door is broken. I'm not going up there alone. A couple minutes later, I see flashlights shining through my window. I hear the police knocking at the door and announcing themselves. They got in and asked me where I was. I came out of my room, and they came and got me. They told me to wait on the back porch while two of them searched the house and one stayed with me. It was like that stuff you see in the movies where they have their guns and turn the corner with their partner and everything. They didn't find anyone, and I said nothing looked like it had been taken. They even tried to get fingerprints but were unsuccessful. They then started asking me questions and informed me that the back door was unlocked and had no signs it had been broken. I told them I locked it. Luckily, the guy I was talking to stayed with me that night, but I still couldn't sleep. I kept having to go check every inch of the house over and over. I placed chairs under the door handles on the front and back door, and even my bedroom. The next day, I informed our landlord and she refused to come out and change the locks, and she never ended up changing them for the rest of the time we lived there. Every time I go to bed now, I triple check all the doors have been locked, doesn't matter where I am. I have a dog now and he helps my anxiety of intruders, as well a recent purchase of a Ring doorbell. I believe it was our old roommate's boyfriend. I think they may have made an extra key for him because he was basically living there. But I don't understand why he didn't do anything to me, the house, or our belongings. If it were someone random, I don't know why they wouldn't have done what they intended, and that could be many different possibilities. I don't know what their intentions were that night, but to the man who broke into my house on Christmas Eve, let's not meet again. All right, here we go. Nearly a year ago now, on Christmas, I was at my dad's with some of my siblings. We celebrated Christmas, and then after dinner, my dad headed off to be with his girlfriend at her apartment. Left in the house were my 16-year-old uncle, my 16-year-older brother, me who was 15, and the youngest who was a toddler. I woke up early the next morning, the day after Christmas, and sat on the floor beside an outlet on my tablet. Everyone else was still sleeping, and then I heard banging on the back door. I thought it was my dad coming back, but the banging got louder and went on for too long. For lack of a better term, I disassociated, didn't know what to do, and couldn't move until I heard the back door break. I had been paranoid about home invasion due to our area in the city before, but I had no idea what to do and just stood there in shock. I put down my tablet and picked up a nearby flashlight, I think to throw at whoever broke in. When the back door had given out, I heard him go quickly through the downstairs, stomp up the stairs, and then he was right outside of the door of the room I was in. The man opened the door, turned left, and then turned right, where he saw me sitting on the floor, beside the outlet less than 3 feet away from him. He was taller than my dad and wore completely black and a ski mask. He held a big rusty crowbar that had a blue handle. He was wide and looked on the older side. I took a small breath and screamed louder than I ever have, and I held it for at least 20 seconds. Once I screamed, he screamed a bit too, and then ran downstairs and out of the house. I went to the top of the staircase after he was already down them and out the hallway, and I yelled, "Please leave," as loud as I had screamed less than a second before. Looking back, asking a house invader to leave is useless, because he already was leaving, and also because he broke in, but I wasn't thinking the best. My screaming woke up my uncle and my older brother. I wasn't wearing pants, so I put pants on quicker than I ever have, while telling my older brother what just happened as he was half awake and confused. I ran downstairs and my uncle had just come from his room in the basement. I quickly told him someone had broken in and left after I screamed. He already had a knife and told me to grab one too. I did, and after making sure the robber had left the house and checking quickly on the toddler who was somehow still sleeping, my uncle told me to guard the back door and stab anyone who comes through while he checked the area outside the neighborhood to see if the robber was gone or where he went. I held the knife and stood beside the broken back door, knowing if someone came back, I couldn't do anything, as I have never fought, and I'm a child holding a kitchen knife. So I just held the knife in hopes they wouldn't come back, and they didn't. My uncle came back and said they must have had a driver, since no way could he get away that fast on foot. None of us had phones, so my older brother called my dad over Instagram on a tablet to tell him what happened. We explained what happened, and with my dad still being 10 minutes away, he hung up. While we all sat and waited for my dad, we talked and realized this was likely all planned. The invader came in when there was no car in the driveway, and after entering he ran directly upstairs, ignoring the new Christmas presents and alcohol collection, and even 2 gaming consoles smack dab in the middle of the living room that he ran through. He went directly for my dad's room, where me and my older brother were. My dad collects valuable shoes and has some expensive watches he keeps in his closet, and only someone friends with my dad who'd been in the house before could have done it and knew the right place to go. When my dad came back, he asked me over and over about how the intruder looked, and I told him again and again, while he and my uncle tried to think of which friend it could have been. I was the only one who saw the guy, and had been less than 3 feet away from me. I was in direct physical danger from some stranger I'd never met. We didn't call the cops, as the police in our area and city are known for being more than unhelpful. As Christmas is getting closer again, I'm worried about being back there around the same time the person broke in. I've had a harder time sleeping, and I've been more paranoid. I understand I was and am very, very lucky that I wasn't hurt, and all we got was a broken back door, but I still honestly hate the person who broke in. I hope wherever he is, nobody likes him.